Welcome to the Chaos Sector. In today's episode, we return to the Matrix, specifically the political matrix. Yeah, it's a circus, but we want to make sure it doesn't become too wacky that everyone overlooks it. Although that's the best thing to do, you have to keep an eye on what's going on behind those mudslinging walls. Many have dismissed politics due to the nonsense. Others are loyal supporters for the two major parties, fighting endlessly for power over the people. Divide and conquer is the name of the game. But within the political matrix, let's focus on a few things. Donald Trump has been convicted. Democrats don't have anyone but Grandpa Joe as their candidate. And Dr. Fauci is back with more tap dancing. Yes, the fact that Fauci is back in the spotlight indicates there's another wave they're trying to sneak back into the fray. Repeating the same tactic I see. This was done the first time to prevent Donald Trump from being reelected. A global conspiracy to prevent a president from being elected? Sounds absurd? Well, it is absurd. But if you think about the motive behind it, it makes all the sense in the world. You see, Trump is depicted as racist, but if he would have been reelected in 2020, that narrative would start to contradict itself. So to prevent that from happening, a pandemic was created to distract from the election. Like a thief in the night, there was in fact election fraud. It was caught on camera. The Supreme Courts didn't have the guts to carry out the justice they were sworn in to fight for, and Grandpa Joe rolled into the White House in his wheelchair. Sorry, but not sorry. Everyone was so focused on the pandemic, it was the perfect smokescreen. Throw a rock in the Far East, an attack in the West. Fast forward to the upcoming election, Fauci is back in the spotlight. New York reports there is a new sexually transmitted infection, which is highly contagious, and the Democrats are relying on Grandpa Joe as their candidate. Does anyone truly believe Democrats have no other candidate but Grandpa Joe? Of course not. So why in the world are the Democrats standing aside and allowing a senior citizen be their representative? Not only in 2025, but even prior in 2020? You want to know why Grandpa Joe was chosen? Well, black women had a lot to do with that. If anyone recalls, the founder of Black Votes Matter gave Grandpa Joe an ultimatum. Latasha Brown stated that Grandpa Joe was, quote, dead in the water, unquote, meaning he was in dire need of the black vote to defeat Donald Trump. She presented a bogus ultimatum where she would ensure that he would win if he met her demands. It was a bogus demand, though, to make it appear Brown was sincerely concerned about the contribution. They will vote for him if he chooses a black woman as vice president. And it was so he got the vote. But here's the oddity. The very black woman who became the vice president and Kamala Harris basically called him out for being, guess what? A racist. So black voters voted for Grandpa Joe due to him choosing a black woman as vice president who called him out for being racist in the Democratic debates? Pretty sure everyone remembers Grandpa Joe's statements regarding the black community. I mean, it was obvious. Quote, if you have a problem choosing between me and Donald Trump, then you ain't black. Unquote. This is one of the most disgusting things ever said by a politician. Grandpa Joe is literally claiming that a black person is a sellout to their community if they vote for Trump. And on the subconscious level, a black person voting for a Republican is not a, quote, real black person. The reason he was able to get away with this insult is because many in the black community echo that same philosophy. Wow, so no wonder the black community turned the other cheek and went out to vote for him. And there was more of that. He even suggests that, quote, poor kids are just as bright and talented as white kids, unquote. Poor kids is alluding to black and Hispanic kids being just as bright and talented as white kids. So you're associating poverty with black and Hispanic kids? What about suggesting that those same black and Hispanic youth had issues finding resources on getting testing for COVID? Oh, so now they're not only poor, but they're also too dumb to find a library or even search online about local testing. In addition, it is the Democratic Party that assumes many black and Hispanic youth do not have forms of identification in regards to voting. Really? This is insulting those communities, suggesting they somehow don't have access to local government offices to obtain or renew their identification cards. Really? They did a public survey on this very issue in those communities, and literally every black and Hispanic person asked knew exactly where the office was and how easy it was to make that commute. But Democrats make it seem as if the black and Hispanic communities are not capable in finding those government buildings. essentially depicting them as incompetent. Wow. And to add even more insult to those communities, Grandpa Joe offered $100 for individuals to get vaccinated. And some cities were even giving away free lottery tickets to persuade individuals to get vaccinated. I mean, what the heck is this? To borrow one of Grandpa Joe's common phrases, I'm not kidding, folks, that really happened. It's not hyperbole. Yeah, he loves to say, oh, it's not hyperbole, and he's not kidding. Well, I guess he never kid about his views about the Black and Hispanic communities. And then there's more. He also stated, quote, "What you all know that most people don't know, unlike the African American community with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. You go to Florida, you find a very different attitude about immigration in certain places than you do when you're in Arizona. So it's a very diverse community," unquote. Now this is where his prejudice and bigotry is really showing its ugly head. First off, when dealing with issues regarding culture, you do not make a comparison in a negative context. Meaning, even if the African American community wasn't as diverse as the Latin community, you don't say that. You show class, respect, and uphold integrity for the very community that you and the rest of the Democratic Party literally need to be successful come election time. And let's be honest, the so-called diversity is not about the diaspora regarding ethnicity. It was about philosophies, perspectives, perceptions, social political views, laws and policies, etc. He clearly is out of touch with reality and culture in general. He lacks respect for those who he feels are insignificant. And many think it's Donald Trump with the elitist attitude. It's actually the, quote, good old boy from Scranton. But he keeps throwing condescending remarks at the Black community. And somehow they keep supporting this person. A white man doing it at that? Wouldn't these be examples of white-splaining? Treating the lower class communities like a pack of stray animals, throwing meat out of your window for them to devour. Yeah, Democrats see the lower class of Blacks and Hispanics as political ragdolls they throw around, but yet champion this image around as if they are the voice of the voiceless. Disgusting. Yet, with all of these cultural stigmas and beliefs that Grandpa Joe has about these communities, they decided to vote for this man. Does this make sense to you? Of course not. And to add insult to injury, those Black voters wouldn't vote for a Black woman as the Democratic candidate, rather an old racist white man? There's no logic behind that, so it has to be a conspiracy. Think about this for a moment. Black women make up approximately 85 to 90% of the Black vote for Democrats. LaTosha Brown requested for Grandpa Joe to obtain the support from the Black community. He would have to select a Black woman as his vice president. That Black woman had previously called old Joe out in the Democratic debates, basically calling him racist. In response to old Joe's comments about the Black community choosing him or Trump, LaTosha Brown stated, quote, "He spoke too cavalierly," unquote. Oh really? So old Joe can question a Black person's Blackness as a white man and it not be seen as offensive? It's not considered racist? Is it because he's a Democrat? Then if that wasn't an example of racism, which it would have been if it were a Republican, then there is no such thing. I know many would refute this, but I reiterate, if a Democrat insults the Black community and it's not considered racism, prejudice, bigotry, well, apparently individuals like LaTosha Brown would allow this disrespect from this Democrat based on politics? Then racism can't be real because you're disregarding blatant racism against your community for the sake of a political party? What is this? How do you expect to fight against racism if you're selective in that fight? Here's the Trump edition of that statement. Quote, "If you have a problem deciding whether you'll vote for me or Joe Biden, then you ain't Black," unquote. Now, of course, this would be considered flat-out racism by the left, but apparently a Democrat can say this in front of millions of people and it's considered cavalier? Since when did the Black community sweep racism under the rug? What does this all mean? What is being protected? The truth about racism, that's the secret. You may think that's a bit of a reach, right? Think again, because you need to awaken to the truth. With the concept of racism, Grandpa Joe would be racist against Blacks. But the Black community still voted for him. So how do you justify the racism? If Obama was a Republican, the Black community wouldn't have voted for him, which ironically would not have made history. Says a lot about the celebration, right? Although it was historical, It was more about Obama being a black Democrat rather than being the first black president. It's what politics is all about, divide and conquer. Democrats for the black community, Republicans for the white community, the two races at the forefront of so-called racism. If Donald Trump was a Democrat, he wouldn't be deemed racist. If Grandpa Joe was a Republican and made those same statements about the black community, he would be deemed racist. So where's the racism if it's not being called out on the left? Does racism get a pass due to being partisan for a political party? Then the racism is not more important than the political party then. Okay, let that sink in for a moment. If you have been keeping track of the opinions of many Americans, a lot of non-white citizens are supporting Trump. Blacks, Hispanics, Mexican Americans, Asians, and other non-white citizens support Trump. So if many believe that Trump is racist, are they suggesting that these groups are sellouts? Are they suffering from some Stockholm syndrome? And dare I say that they are somehow, quote, misinformed or even ignorant? This has been said about these communities. We all know that's not the truth. So what gives here? Racism is a social construct used to divide and conquer. It's technically an illusion, as prejudice is what people experience. And prejudice spans throughout many groups. All groups carry some form of prejudice based on cultural stigmas. It does exist, but it's mainly based on how groups present themselves. I know this is a touchy subject for some, as they may disagree. But you have to understand the depths of deception, remember. This is the Matrix.
Correct, and I will elaborate on that a moment. Just know you can't believe what you see or hear anymore. It's all an illusion. It's simple. The Democrats know that the majority of America supports Donald Trump. They can't allow him to get reelected, because once again, it would mean that blacks, Hispanics, Mexican Americans, Asians, and other non-white citizens would have voted for him. So they voted for a racist. What would MSNBC say? What would CNN say? What would the Democratic Party say? They couldn't possibly say that those non-white American citizens are somehow not aware about Trump being racist, right? So obviously they wouldn't see him as racist, and that destroys racism itself. And the truth starts unraveling before your eyes. He wasn't racist before he ran for president, but because he was on the Republican side, he transformed into the orange raging white supremacist. Now remember, you're being guided through the Matrix. Donald Trump is a part of the system. He's like the global version of Alex Jones. And we all know Alex Jones is a disinfo agent. This is what Trump is. He tells the truth, but from the place of deception. But just like Alex Jones, the truth they reveal is beneficial. A disinfo agent wants to inform you, but they have a motive contrary to that information. Often it's to create some sort of societal rebellion or revolution. And that's what Alex Jones attempted to do. But he was exposed as a disinfo agent in the process. Trump will provoke anarchy in society. It's inevitable. That anarchy, of course, will lead to martial law, and this will lead to the next civil war. So for those out there who are supporting Donald Trump, just know, when anarchy floods the streets, be prepared to protect everything and everyone you love. He will be elected, but before that happens, prepare for another wave of the pandemic. And another public health scare, the manufactured sexual transmitted infection. I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume Fauci had something to do with that, quote, outbreak. After all, he was the key medical figure during the AIDS epidemic. It's all coming together, hey? Gain of function? Perhaps they'll combine strains of the 2020 virus with the new STI virus and make a super virus. Maybe they already did that. All to distract from the election. By the time it comes around, the American people will be in a case of hysteria. But in that hysteria, there will be a voice of reason, helping you keep your sanity, because you will need it.
Anarchy has already taken place behind the scenes. Organizations such as Antifa, BLM, Proud Boys, white nationalists, black nationalists, the social justice warrior movement, all of these groups are a representation of the incoming anarchy. The federal government funds the organizations. The organization funds the youth who push the political agenda in the form of protest or even riots. The majority of those so-called activists are in college, some in high school, and some even still in middle school. You have to understand there is a financial incentive for these individuals to protest and riot. If a young person was offered $100 to just attend a protest, they'd do it. If a young person was offered $200 to just go out and hold a sign, most would do it. If a young person was offered $500 to scream and yell about injustices with a bullhorn, They do it. If a young person is offered $5,000 to set buildings on fire, vandalize city property, break car windows, fight with anyone who challenges their views, yeah, they do it. See, the reason the youth are used in these manufactured protests and riots, because fairly speaking, the youth do not value or respect much of anything. So of course, they will be the ones paid to cause havoc. Young people are just going into retail stores during business hours and simply looting right in front of employees and customers. And those politicians, being the mayors and governors, are allowing them to do it, to terrorize those cities. In fact, I would suggest the looting is not criminal activity. What am I saying? Yeah, those stores the looters break into agree to have their businesses ransacked. Their insurance will cover the damages, and they will get all the money back behind closed doors. It's the mayor and governor's way of wealth, giving back to the communities. The business owners are interviewed, pretending to be so devastated for their losses. But in reality, they were compensated, perhaps double the amount of their annual profits. And let's be honest, it's happening in the lower class communities more so. And of course, most of this looting is in fact happening in cities run by Democrat mayors. Wherever the so-called social political protesting is occurring, that's where the looting is, as well. Can you say government handouts? Yeah, that's the new package. They're all working together. Democrats and Republicans are working together as well. It's all one big sham. Heck, going even deeper, blacks and whites are working together to carry out the race war in society. Remember Kyle Rittenhouse, the teen strapped with an assault rifle who shot 3 people during the protest in Kenosha? This was in 2020, the pandemic year, during a protest about a police shooting. But the underlying message presented was a white male walking around either protecting himself against or searching to shoot black people in the race war. This photo is depicting what the opposition is trying to provoke. The racial matrix, we'll get into that soon enough. Listen, you've been lied to. You must be aware of this. This is not to fear-monger, because frankly, most of you already expect this outcome. You need protection. The greatest protection you have is your brain. The opposition doesn't like when you use your brain. They want zombies, running around on TikTok, flailing around like brainless puppets. Yes, this makes it that much easier to control the masses. Yes, TikTok was brought to you by China, the so-called enemy of the United States. The same China that worked with the United States to create the pandemic. It's used to dumb down the masses, even more than they have become. If everything is fun and games, nobody pays attention to the warnings and dangers. Congressmen and women spend most of their time laughing and joking with each other away from the cameras, my friends, and laugh behind your backs. We've already caught them joking with each other. Yes, the so-called fierce adversaries of Democrats and Republicans. On their lunch breaks, they discuss who's treating for lunch. How's your family? Oh, they're great. Such and such is still playing football. Yeah, he's thinking about entering the draft. Wow, that's good news. But when they place the camera on them, oh, it's mudslinging time for you to view. The brainless zombies believe they despise each other. And of course, you pick a side in the fake battles. Unplug from the system, it's frying your brain. The best thing for everyone to do at this moment is stockpile on perishables, gallons of water, batteries, and save enough money to leave the country. Because America is collapsing. I know it sounds like doomsday, but that's exactly what's coming. You have to remember, when Trump was elected back in 2016, there were riots, individuals being threatened, assaulted in schools because they voted for Donald Trump. January 6th was a pretext to the anarchy the country is facing. More violence, more riots, and if the orange puppet becomes president, you will see the destruction play out in cities across the country. A civil war is approaching. Get prepared. Don't fall asleep in the matrix. You might not wake up again. This is the chaos sector.